All right. You see that? Not the hose. Not the hose. Come on, Arrow. That right there. See that water drip in the smoke show? See that little crack in the water? Yep, right there. That's your three-way heater valve on your Mercedes-Benz S-Class W220. And this thing is notorious for failing. There's no signs, there's no nothing. This is probably your first time even hearing about it if you've never had any problems with it. So, in today's video, I'm going to show you how to fix it the best way I can because it is a pain in the butt. So, one more thing. I also removed the front service panel right in front of your firewall. Did you even know you had a service panel right here? Bet you didn't. Hit that like button if you've learned something new. All right, so I've tried to remove as many panels as possible to gain access to the three-way heater valve, and nothing really works. So with that said, I'm saving you some time and some screws. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is remove all of our engine covers and everything like that. And we're going to just zoom in and look for our heater hose, our heater valve. And it's right there. It's right on the driver's side of the firewall if you're in the United States. And this is what it looks like. This is what your three-way heater valve looks like. I don't know why Mercedes made this in plastic, and I don't know why there wasn't a recall, because I mean I've had two S classes and they've both failed, and you would think that they would make it in aluminum. In fact, I'm probably going to weld up an aluminum version of this and just make it bulletproof for this car and never have to worry about it again. But to be fair, this particular heater valve lasted over 200,000 miles, so most people probably won't even keep the car that long. All right, so you can see right here we have our brake booster line, and you just kind of squeeze some tabs and it separates. And so again, you're going to need as much space and clearance as possible for this job. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's pretty frustrating. It's not too difficult of a job, but it's a frustrating job. And so moving everything out as much as possible helps. All right, so right here we have a vacuum line, and we're going to just disconnect this hose. And you can use a flathead screwdriver, that helps. And we're going to disconnect that hose, and then we're just going to push it back so that it's, again, out of the way. You can see right there, it just kind of tucks nicely off to the side by the MAF sensor, which connects to your throttle body. And if you haven't cleaned your MAF sensor, I have a video for that. So be sure to check it out. Link will be in the description below. All right, so now we have to remove or just unseat our O2 sensor bracket from, our O2 sensor harness from the bracket right there, and just kind of lift it up. You don't have to really do much more than that. Definitely don't have to disconnect it. It just sits in like a little cradle. All right, so now here's our first clamp, and these are spring-loaded clamps. Again, I don't know why Mercedes use spring-loaded clamps, but you're gonna need some long needle nose pliers. The bigger and better and wider, the better. Yeah. So you're gonna need some needle nose pliers to get down in there, and you're just pretty much gonna squeeze those clamps and then slide them back. And if you want, I just thought about, you can kind of spray some silicone on the hose so that they'll slide easier, but I didn't use silicone. But it's a good idea. It won't hurt on the hose, on the outside of the hose. But pretty much right here, we're just going to work that clamp backwards so that we can unseat the hose and remove the hose. So actually forward. Yeah, backwards. Yep, backwards away from the hose like that. Yep. Okay, so now we're going to go to the rear, kind of like behind this little panel here. And this is where it gets frustratingly hard because the two hoses in the back are really hard to get to. And this is where having a good pair of needle nose pliers really comes in handy. If you have a special tool to really lock down on those spring-loaded clamps, then that's even better. But they're right there. You can see them. I had some arrows up, and they're sitting right there. And that little plastic tab with the screw, I tried removing that, and that doesn't come up unless you remove like the windshield wiper and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't bother removing it, mainly because I've done this job before without removing it, and it doesn't help. So you're just going to take some needle nose pliers and just try to remove those clamps. Now, you might come into a situation where you have the needle nose pliers on the clamps and it slips. And what's going to happen is it's going to push the needle nose clamps, or it's going to push the spring-loaded clamps like to the right. And then it's going to be harder to access those clamps with the needle nose pliers. But don't panic. Don't, be afraid, because you can use a screwdriver and just kind of push the clamps back into alignment, and then you can use the needle nose pliers again. You saw me playing with that brake booster hose earlier. You can move the top part of the brake booster hose by the brake reservoir, the master cylinder area. You can move that hose a little bit. I didn't want to take it out. I just moved it. That's all you really need. But you can see right here that I'm working with, those clamps. And that's really the hardest part is, working with these clamps. You can see I got a screwdriver right there because the clamp slipped and I had to push it back. And I know all of this is kind of boring, but I'm showing you all of this so that you have an understanding of what to do if you come into this situation. And here you can see I'm using a pretty big screwdriver. Pretty much it's just to get a little more leverage because it's so deep down in there. And so the bigger the screwdriver, the better in terms of moving those clamps once they slip. So you can see right there, I'm doing it again. I'm wearing a glove because the needle nose pliers were so thin and it was really hurting my hand. So again, get the best needle nose pliers you can buy. Now, here I'm kind of playing with that brake booster hose again and just, kind of getting it out the way. So here I removed the clamp on the inside, the big clamp, which is the same size as this one. So now what we're going to do is come back to the front like this, and we're going to remove the hose. And you can just take like a panel removal tool like this and push that hose back till it's off. And then what you're going to do to get this three-way heater valve removed is you're going to lift up like that. So it's like a little door handle. It's a reverse door handle, and then you pull out. Now, remove that clamp so it doesn't fall in the engine bay. And what you're going to do to remove the small hose is pull the heater valve out. And that small hose is actually longer than you think. So you can pull that hose out a few inches. You can pull it out a few inches. I mean, don't go overboard and, try to pull out like 10 feet. But, you can pull it out a few inches, which is enough to get access to that small hose clamp and remove it. And so you'll see here, again, it's still tricky. You need the spring-loaded, or you need the long needle nose pliers. But basically what you're doing is you're pushing that clamp backwards. And you're just kind of sliding it, inching it backwards as much as you can so that you can pull the hose. See how I got it back? So you can pull the hose off the valve. Again, you can spray like some silicone on the hose. That would help a lot so that those clamps slide pretty easily. All right, so now we got our three-way valve off. And let me tell you, this video doesn't show how frustrating this job is when I was doing it. But because you're watching this video, you shouldn't have this problem because you know what to do. And that's why I'm making this video and sharing it with y'all so that you have an easier time replacing your heater valve. And that's what it looks like. That's the old one. You can see there's no real signs of failure. And the only place that it really fails, from my experience, is right there like on the seam on the other side. I'm not showing it, but on the other side is where it fails. Other than that, it's pretty solid. But definitely I would recommend, if I wish Mercedes would make a metal, like an aluminum version. And now these spring-loaded clamps, you can chuck them because we're going to use real hose clamps. These are what should have came on the car, especially for this particular part, just because it's so hard to get to. And the hose clamps with the screws like that makes it so much easier to take on and off. And I'm sure it was probably a cost-saving thing, but you can see right there, there's the part number and everything like that. And don't worry, I'll put the part number in the description below. So we're going to start with this small hose clamp right here first. And pretty much we're just installing in reverse order. And so we're going to open up the hose clamp so that it can slide over the hose. Now, one thing about installing these hose clamps, I mean, they are going to be a lot easier, but they're going to be easy if you orientate them in the right direction. So that screw at the top, make sure that it's orientated in a position where you can tighten it and gain access to it easily. And it's not, so pretty much, don't install it backwards where the screw is on the inside of the firewall facing away from you, and then you can't really get access to it. So keep that in mind when you're putting the hose clamps on, and then it'll make life a lot easier if you ever have to replace this valve in the future. Okay, so we have our hose clamps on our hoses, and now we can put our three-way heater valve onto the hose. So there, once again, I'm pulling that hose out, and you can see right there, it's kind of like pulling veins, and clamping veins. But you can see right there, I'm pulling that hose out, and I'm just kind of sliding it on. Again, you can use a little bit of silicone. I'll show that later in the video, but just don't put silicone inside the hose where it can, contaminate the cooling system. And so here is another pair of pliers that I'm going to recommend, and they're hose pliers, and they kind of have a funny looking beak at the end. And these come in handy to grab the hose and slide it on. So you see right there how I'm sliding that hose on to the valve. And you can see right there, once that's all done, then I have the clamp on. Now you can see the hose clamp, the bolt is on the left side. That's because it won't fit on the right side, but also it doesn't matter because to remove the small hose, you take the valve out like this anyway. You're not tightening it down from behind the service panel right here. So, or the kind of little panel right here close to the firewall. So it's okay that this hose clamp is facing to the left. But the other ones you want, especially the other one on the inside, you want it facing to the right. Okay, so we have that hose connected, and now we're going to go ahead and lock this in place because it's going to help to install the second hose, because the second hose is going to be, you're going to have to install it purely by like force, like resistance. And in order to do that, you have to lock down your three-way valve. So we're going to lock it down, and then we're going to get our hose clamps, and we're going to just squeeze and push the hose onto the valve the best we can. You know, it's a time-consuming process. You're gonna have to play around with it and get it to work and stuff like that. But once we have that done, then we can go ahead and tighten it down like you see right there, and we're good to go. So now that we have that tightened down, I'll show you what that looks like. I'll show you, you can see that's the hose right there, the big one that you kind of have to lock down, and then you can see the little small one off to the right or just above it, and see how I have the hose clamp to the left so that it's much easier to unscrew, or tighten and unscrew. So remember, keep that in mind. And yeah, it's just going to be way easier if you ever have to service it in the future. And these are what the hose clamp, the hose pliers look like. See how they kind of have that open, the open beak right there to really grab the hose without, you know, damaging it or anything like that. But still be careful when you have the when you're using the hose pliers, because you don't want to put a hole into those hoses by the firewall. And here's just some heavy duty silicone spray that you can use to just make life easier. You know, you can spray it a little bit on the three-way valve and on top of the hoses, but try not to spray it inside of the valve or inside of the hoses, because again, you don't want to introduce silicone into the cooling system. I'm sure if you're a scientist and you have an explanation for it, leave a comment down below. But okay, so now what we're going to do is install that last hose clamp, and we're going to just loosen up the three-way heater valve again, slide that hose clamp on, and then we're going to slide the main hose back onto it. And again, you know, you're going to lock down the three-way heater valve so that it's stable and it's not moving around, and then you're just going to slide that hose over the valve, and then you're just going to make sure that it seats properly and that it's on there good. And then once it is, you're going to just slide your hose clamp on and tighten it down, and then you'll be good to go. So you can see right there, got the hose clamp on, and again, see the orientation. So imagine if that screw was on the other side, it would be really difficult to tighten down. So, you know, always keep in mind that. All right, so now we're going to put everything back together. So we're going to take our hose that we disconnected, our vacuum line hose, and we're just going to connect it back to this little solenoid thing. And then we're going to put our brake booster line back together right there. And it's super simple. All you do is just click it into place or plug it into place. It auto locks and everything's fine. See, once it's in there, it's in there. So now we're good to go. And then we're going to take our, take our catalytic converter O2 sensor wire harness, and we're going to sit that back in the bracket just like that. And we're good to go on that. All right, so now you can see we've lost a lot of coolant, but not, it wasn't catastrophic. So, if this happens while you're driving, then check to your coolant level, and then, stop somewhere, add some water, and then try to make it home if you can. But you can see there we lost some coolant, but we didn't lose too much. It wasn't catastrophic. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add coolant to our reservoir like this and fill it all the way up. And we're going to fill it, not overflow, but to where the black and the clear kind of meet. You can maybe even fill it a little bit higher, since there's, the engine's going to bleed. It's going to bleed the air out. And this is the coolant that I use. It's a Mercedes-Benz coolant. And it's the recommended coolant for Mercedes. So I'll have a link in the description where you can get that coolant, or the Valvoline coolant as well. That's the equivalent. So I'll have a link for that too. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start the car. You can see right there I have 228,000 miles on the car. So Yeah, if you take care of it and watch all my videos, you can have a good running car as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to set it on high and turn the fan down to low and let the engine run. And you can see right there, the engine's running and the coolant and everything like that. You know, it's just check it, let the fan run a few times and see if the coolant drops. If it doesn't, don't be alarmed. Just drive the car, you know, check it periodically, you know, every day to see if the coolant has, you know, dropped, and then just add more coolant because it'll self-bleed. And pretty much that is how you replace a three-way heater valve. So thank you so much for watching. You know, it means a lot to me, and I'll see everybody in the next video.